Hello, Axie Nation, and welcome to my first ever interview. And I can think of no one better than the man, the myth, the legend, or as some of you know him as Axie Infinity's program lead for esports and content, Zyori. Welcome to the channel. How are you, man?
I'm great. Good to be here. Currently hanging out in Denver in one of the suites downtown, staying with Jiho. We were together for the MCon event that just took place. It wrapped up yesterday, I think, but still some meetings and some networking to be done. Feeling fantastic, dude. It's great to be motivated by Jiho, both by his tweets digitally and also by his just everyday thoughts in real life. You know, at Sky Mavis, we're totally remote, so it's actually sort of a rare treat. We get to be in the same place, same time together.
Oh, no, man. Yeah, it must be such a treat to be able to pick that man's brain for a few hours. But I recently also saw you did a trip to Iceland. What was that all about?
Yeah, man. It feels good to be back. It's been a bit of a whirlwind week going from international travel to moving into a new apartment and then sort of camping out of these new temporary Axie headquarters here in downtown Denver. Iceland was amazing, though. It's a hell of a place, and for me, it was like a combination of workcation and also a proper getaway. I did clock out for a few days and see some sights, but one of the cool things about my job is that we dream big, and when we think about the Axie universe, like a single digit percentage is complete, where like maybe 9 or 10% of the full potential that we see for this ecosystem. And I think that has really exciting implications in terms of scouting out more real world potential, like Axie centers or Axie towns. Like, I think we want to channel a lot more of that real world physical community vibe and channel some of, like the energy that, COVID makes it hard, but the idea of these like weekly meetups, Friday fight nights, I think, it's just really exciting and sort of universally appealing. So even in these slightly more remote countries with lower populations, there's still an Axie presence in Iceland. And they also have a really strong art community. And I think it's really going to be a potential area for NFTs and future art collections as more of the artists realize the immense potential, kind of lurking right beneath their fingertips. So mostly work, a little bit of pleasure, and the great thing about Axie is there's a solid intersection there, man. For me, work's fun most of the time.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Real life world meetups would be, so awesome. Even I just want to travel to the Philippines just to meet some of the scholars that have joined my program and everything. It's actually very exciting. And I can't wait for it to become a reality. But yeah, unfortunately, some circumstances, COVID, it's making it a bit harder right now.
Yeah. Has certainly slowed down some of our plans, all things equal. I think like the idea of AxieCon probably would be much higher priority in the roadmap if COVID hadn't slowed that down. So I definitely feel you there, but luckily we're digital first, so I guess we're able to weather the storm better than a lot of other industries. So yeah. Something we should always remind ourselves and be somewhat thankful for, even though the grass is always greener.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get down to the reason for today's interview, and let me set the scene for our viewers. Recently, a few content creators for Axie Infinity have made videos about them leaving Axie Infinity, closing their scholarships, and selling their Axies, etc. Now, before we jump into the reasons they gave for leaving, which I really just want to analyze today, I just want to ask you, given your role as program lead for content, how do you feel about these guys leaving and the kind of dramatic, if I can put it that way in which they did it?
Yeah, so all this stuff, I have to choose my words very carefully here. So I'm going to attempt to slow down, less is more, and be a little bit more thoughtful here with my responses. It doesn't feel great at face value, right? Like, negativity is overall not good, whether it's justified or not, whether I agree with their perspective or not, whether they have any data or evidence to back up their claims or not. It's still like not a good feeling to know that people are dissatisfied, even if it's a couple people for reasons that you might not be able to control. Would love it if everybody were happy all the time in every aspect with every single thing we do with Axie. Obviously, that's not realistic, though. And I come from the broadcasting world, and one truth that you're sort of forced to digest very early on, if you end up making it as a full-time commentator, is that you can't please everyone. And trying to do that will ruin your brand and basically make your career harder than it has to be. And there's certain battles that you have to accept. Certain things are just by nature somewhat polarizing, and you have to be okay at a certain point, knowing, setting goals and standards for yourself, tracking how you're achieving those, and then kind of just saying F the haters at a certain point. I think that's healthy, right? It's all on a spectrum, but you can't make everybody happy all the time. So I do think that is just the nature of any big system like this that involves a lot of humans. Everybody's going to have a different lens, have a different set of priorities, and like a different history and set of experiences that influence their opinions and decision making. So maybe expected in some sort of a formula. Can't please everyone all the time, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I get you. And it was kind of the reason why I reached out as well, because, I personally, I want to try and conduct this interview as a very unbiased person, but I really just felt that it was a bit unjustly done, or a bit too dramatic, oh, okay, I'm just going to up and leave and quit now overnight, basically, which also, as a content creator myself, I don't appreciate, because we put a lot of work into the things we do, and to be that flimsy about it feels very kind of disrespectful to me, to the community, to the people that have decided to subscribe or follow you or listen to what you're saying. And basically, to the scholars you have as an example. So I don't know. I wasn't very, but I'm trying to, I went down and I looked at the reasons, and I'm trying to analyze it and just see, what are they saying, right? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. No, thanks. Okay, so for the audience out there, let me give you a summarized version of the reasons they gave for leaving, and I'll take them one at a time with a follow-up question. So, number one, given the drop in SLP price, many are a little concerned about their investments into Axie, but, these guys that left are stating that their main problem was that they feel there's a lack of transparency from Sky Mavis. They want detailed game updates. They want to look into the finances, artwork of the new developments. Basically, they want proof of progress. So my first question is, what is your take on these demands for more transparency, or just on their comments about that they feel there's a lack of transparency?
Yeah, so I think there's like two content creators you're talking about specifically. I guess I won't necessarily name drop, but I've watched more content from one of them than the other. I guess I could say suffered through some of it. I think if you watch that content and then watch real gaming journalists, like if you watch like what Richard Lewis does and people like that, there's a very specific art to choosing your words specifically so that you're not speaking in very hyperbolic terms that like really take away from what argument you're trying to deliver on a logical and intellectual level. And I think there are some like glaring red flags to me in some of that content where like one of them had only been making content for like 2 months or something. And he said in one of his videos, when I started this, I said, I'm going to be an Axie for the next 5 years. I'm super long on this project. Yeah. And then within like a matter of months, you're selling all your assets and making, clickbait content about why Axie, is Axie going to recover, and you're being all hyper dramatic. I don't know, man. That's the classic. It reminds me so much of people that used to say to me, I want to be an esports commentator. It's my dream. It's all I've ever wanted in life. It's like, do you even know what the job is like? Because it's like 10% of what you see on camera. That's the fun part. Most of the job is political and like stressful and fighting over getting gigs and worrying about making enough income to survive. Less than 10%, probably closer to like 2 or 3% of all the people that have ever reached out to me and said, no, seriously, I'm not like the others. I really do want this. I understand. They don't make it. They try and they realize it's way harder than they thought. They've got to grind for free a lot longer than they thought. And it's not nearly as glamorous as quickly as they had hoped. I think it's similar. It's easy to come in to Axie during the bull market or an SLP spike and go, I'm going to be in this game forever. Look at these insane games. You don't really have any perspective to make that claim and have it really mean very much. So I think you have to balance that with this, like, hey, you don't do like product announcements and launches like these other AAA games. Like Riot does it this way. Why don't you just do it this way? It's like, okay, well, Riot has way more infrastructure, way more time, and way more built up around their ecosystem than we do. We have one game that's in alpha. They have a whole myriad of games that are managed by this giant network. Riot's whole business model is own the whole stack. And that allows them to do a lot of things very quickly and efficiently once they have built the stack. We have just started taking the first steps of building our giant stack. I mean, Axie's in alpha, Axie Esports are in pre-alpha. Sky Mavis is going through this wild transition right now from proper startup where co-founders kind of do everything. There was a point where co-founders were paid in, like tokens before they were worth a lot of money. So we're now just starting that transition of like building out HR infrastructure and becoming like a proper company and being able to hire people very quickly, and, spend some of that money that we raised in our Series A. But that takes time, right? You can't just mass hire people. You have to make sure they're a good skill set fit, they're a good culture fit. You have to do that growth very carefully. So I think there are some like legitimate criticisms in terms of, could our communications be a little better? Absolutely. Could we do a better job leaking content specifically with like, hey, here's images from actual versions, Battles version 2. Yeah, maybe. But if you've just come in for 2 months and you're immediately trying to make this giant argument about why you can't trust us because our PR system is not on par with like a AAA developer, you just don't understand what's going on. Yeah. And you haven't even really bothered to listen to the interviews or engage with the content where co-founders have explained this stuff, kind of time and time again. And maybe we just need to do more of that. Maybe we need to do AMAs, monthly instead of quarterly. I'm not saying that we're perfect. I'm just saying that given where we are and the resources that we have and the crazy unexpected growth that we experience, we're doing the best we can with what we've got. It's not a function of some, shady, malicious strategy to pull wool over people's eyes or something. It's kind of just a lack of resources. We don't have a communications lead right now. That's sort of under the scope of Jiho, who's also the growth lead and also a co-founder. And I mean, there's not enough bandwidth to go around. Yeah. That's generally what it's a function of. Yeah. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer.
No. It's fine. I mean, I get what you're saying, and even I know from what I've seen and what I've read from Gio and them, it's also, it's the bleeding edge stuff. It is new stuff. There's a very particular intellectual property that sits with this. So if you look at other things like Monster Infinite, that's popping up, that is exactly just copying what Axie Infinity is doing. How transparent do you want to be with exactly what you are busy with all these copycats trying to come in? I mean, it takes more time and it's always more difficult to be the first to do something. And, I get that. I get that completely. And I hear you, man. I mean, their whole thing had this underlying message of distrust to the developers. Are they actually really working on it? And which just spreads fear. And I really find it funny because, when the price of SLP was at 20 cents, then there was no lack of transparency. Then Axie Infinity was the best, and the community is great, and everything is good. And now they're coming out with toxic positivity is what they're calling it, and all these other things. And No, so I get.
Yeah, I think it's, if you look at sort of the trajectory of these YouTube channels, they obviously got a huge spike in subscribers because they finally found a piece of content that resonates with how a small but loud portion of the community feel, with clickbait titles, with these kind of catastrophe prediction type things that outside of Axie, that psychology is really effective, right? How many cults and crazy leaders have predicted the times are going to end on this date, and then when it doesn't happen, they come up with some excuse as to why they were wrong, and then there's another date And like, why does that transparent formula still work in this current age? Why does that convince people? Because that psychology is very compelling. It kind of hijacks our competitive nature as, still sort of proto beings in terms of our hardware. We're still sort of hardwired to like fight or flight, and when a catastrophe hits, we want to be prepared. It's a very natural instinct for us. So that content is just always going to be really compelling. And as a content creator or a gaming journalist or whatever you want to call yourself, an unbiased third party, you've got to factor all that in and not let that kind of get too deep intertwined with your content. It's only clickbait if the content doesn't kind of live up to the title, I guess. Sure. But you got to zoom out your SLP graph a little bit. We're certainly empathetic to the fact that people make a lot of money off of SLP in developing countries, and it's a big part of their income. But it's all part of a system that has a lot of moving parts. And I mean, we consult with professionals that do tokenomics for a living. There are professional people that understand the economics on a level way better than I do, certainly better than these people do, and sort of just pretending like, guys, if SLP doesn't go up, the whole ecosystem's going to crash. What are we going to do? That is like the most reductionist take on Axie tokenomics possible, and it's just demonstrative of you don't really have as deep of an understanding as you think you do, and that's fine. I'm not expecting everybody to be able to understand it, but I think that's where the gap comes in with making this kind of crisis content and acting like you have all the information when you're looking at 2 cards out of 50.
Yeah, no, got you. While we're just on the topic of SLP, it's not the focus of today. This I just have one question for myself that I'm thinking about. I think I assume most people understand that the price of SLP is basically dropping because there's being more minted than there's being burned. That's the main reason for it, right?
So, yeah.
And the developers are hard at work in releasing these new game modes and the decks, which will help with this issue, but also, maybe expand on the tokens that are out there and maybe not make everything reliant just on SLP, But basically the main question I want to know is, has there been any kind of discussion at Sky Mavis about some kind of floor price level for SLP where they will need to intervene? Like, suppose the price drops to 0.01 cents. Will a quick fix have to be made, or is it more the case of let the market do what it does and we will release the game modes, new game modes when we are ready, and not release bad code, basically?
It's a combination. There's no magic answer to this question. Sometimes emergency adjustments have to be made. Markets can move really fast, especially in the global 24/7 markets that we're used to with crypto. So we're always watching. We have levers that we can pull, and we're not afraid to pull them and make quick adjustments as needed. In terms of a specific SLP floor, no, I don't think so, because it's all intertwined, right? Increasing SLP has a big correlation with new user adoption and growth from that perspective. It's important to remember that the nature of us being an alpha, all the pillars of the ecosystem haven't really been completed yet. So that's why things feel maybe a little bit funky. We're still working on scaling updates as well. And I think that's something that we're always hesitant to communicate because it's not really sexy and it's a little scary just to throw out there hey guys, the servers are not as stable as you think they are. It's that seems like an unnecessary update. But even though the servers have been stable and they work for basic gameplay, we're still working on those large scale deployments for getting the servers ready to handle 10 million daily active users or 50 million daily active users. So there are some things in the background that need to be completed to unlock next things, and then that opens up some next parts of the roadmap, if that makes sense. So sometimes we're beholden to our dev cycle in that way, where it's hey, this upgrade's done when it's done. We're doing stuff that's never been done before. We're writing the playbook as we're writing the code. So we're working as fast as we can. We hope it'll be done in a couple of weeks. A few weeks later, we're going to need a few more weeks. It's just kind of the nature of it. And that's where I think the expectations of just tell us when it's going to be done. Just give us the ETA it's just really not that simple. I think internally we would love to do that. It would make our lives a lot easier and less stressful if we could say, okay, it's going to take exactly 2 weeks and then we could plan that launch. That's part of the controlled chaos that we're managing at Sky Mavis, right? That's part of what makes this so fun and exciting and valuable, but also so hard.
No, absolutely. My day job is actually a digital business developer. So I had a development team and I did the business behind a digital platform that we built. And so obviously I was also connected to devs. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's just the reality. It's the nature of things. And I mean, you guys are in a particularly tough situation there with the technology there is so new and so specific that, just getting a new engineer is not an overnight thing, right? And you guys have said as much. So that just makes it even more complicated. And I think basically what all this comes down to is, some people rely on the income of SLP, and, even I recently now quit my day job to pursue content full time and manage my scholarship. But I understand that Sky Mavis can't just intervene every time the price drops with quick fixes, because this may impact the long term of the game, right? Whether it's getting another huge wave of users that we're not ready for, or maybe suppose you do a breeding event, that there's just a way too many axies being bred, or there's some kind of, we don't always know what the impact can be. And I'm in it for the long haul. So I'd rather say, okay, well, let's sit tight. Because if we're going to screw up the long haul, then we're screwed anyway. So let's just trust these guys. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I know we say it a lot. I probably said it in this interview already, but we're super long on Axie, and the short term does matter, and we pay attention to it. But if you're looking at like SLP percentages in like week spans, or like, hey, this last month has been pretty brutal, this might not be a great time for you to play Axie. I know that's a really unpopular thing to say. I've seen people on Twitter say the developers tell some people that Axie's not for them. And it's just us being honest. This is truly like as alpha as it gets. The game will be more stable and feel more like a AAA title once we get over this hump of like having version 2 of battles out and free to play and land gameplay. Like imagine being able to just download Axie through the App Store on your phone and just onboard with free to play that seamlessly. That future is not that far away, but it's also not that close, right? Like it's not coming tomorrow. We're talking about quarters, So like these sorts of things are really exciting, and that's what we're all hands on deck to build towards. And I don't think we've ever promised that it's going to be a super smooth sailing ride without any road bumps to get to that launch status. There's a reason we don't even call Axie a beta yet. You got to remember there's another step after alpha, right? Alpha is denoted for this kind of crazy period where there's a lot of unknowns, and like our roadmap is our best honest impression of where we want to be and what we think we can do, but it needs updating from time to time. We did not think we were going to have to spend so much of this quarter refactoring code to scale our servers, but it was clear that we had to. We had to get the game stable, and now that means we've got to reorder and reprioritize some stuff on the roadmap that we were hoping would have been launched by now. That's just the nature of it. That's part of being in an alpha. And as members of the community in the game, you're going to have to kind of ride those bumps with us until we get over them and get some of these products launched. So that's kind of what we mean when we say like Axie's not for everyone. Alpha games aren't for everyone. If you're coming in looking for like a polished AAA launched game, you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed, because this is as alpha as it gets. This is an alpha on bleeding edge technology that is blockchain and NFTs. It's not even cutting edge, right? We're on the layer beyond that we call bleeding edge. It's, you got to be prepared for that if you want to ride the Axie roller coaster right now. It's just the reality. I don't mean that to scare people away. Please come play Axie, join us. It's a great time. You're still early, right? But you can't have it all ways. You can't still be early and then also get it once it's polished and mainstream and ready for mass adoption. That's part of what being early means, I think, to some degree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, there's one point there where I remember when the servers were down. That was barely, I think, 6 weeks or so after I started playing. And I don't think people give Sky Mavis enough credit for how quickly those servers were actually fixed. If you think about it, I think you guys took less than 10 days total, maybe, from when.
Well, and we had to make hard decisions, right? We had to turn off everything that wasn't mission critical. That was why the esports server is a private whitelist setup with, limited access. That wasn't part of the design. I didn't come in and pitch that. I was told, hey, to scale these servers, we have to turn off everything except the most basic features. Sorry, tournaments don't make the cut. I had to push to get that server created so that we could have something. I think esports it made our preseason a little more clunky and a little bit harder to set up because, not everybody can get access. But given the alternative, I would much rather have this preseason than just no esports for this entire time while we're waiting for upgrades to be complete. So that's just another example of how the roadmap gets thrown into chaos very easily. I had way different esports. I spent weeks modeling out an esports strategy for 2021 that got thrown away and completely restarted once we hit these scaling issues. Yeah. And I think that's sort of a feature, not a bug, right? That's not even a complaint, just an acknowledgement that things change really fast. And I've only been with the company for like 5 months now, and my job scope has changed entirely at least twice already.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, just a last point on this. If you look at, for example, I saw a documentary about World of Warcraft, right? And when that launched for the first time, same thing. Like, the service got so overrun by the amount of users that had it, it crashed. And, people saying, but it's been done for years now. No, this is bleeding edge technology. It's new stuff. The servers aren't the same as the WoW servers. It's not as simple as spinning them up. So I'm just gonna leave it at there for now. I'm wary of our time, so I just want to get into the next questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just to get back to the reason why these guys left, right? An interesting thing for me is they are claiming that certain members of the Axie community, and specifically the Mystic Axie holders, get too much preferential treatment, even going so far as to say there are some kind of secret groups where information is given about developments earlier than, for the rest of the community. Now, I honestly know nothing about this. We own about 40 ETH worth of land, and I haven't seen anything like this. So can you maybe shed some light on this? And also, where can I...
Are you a Mystic holder?
No, I'm not a Mystic holder, though. That's the next step.
I see.
Yeah.
That's where you're missing out. I mean, I think this is one of the bigger sticking points of this entire dialogue. Those videos have so many things in there that make me want to pause and talk about. I could do a whole multi-hour dissection, and it's certainly not worth that level of mental bandwidth. But I tweeted the other day, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I think that's where some of the frustration from our side of what makes a good faith call out, right? Like, being held accountable by your community is a good thing, and people should have healthy skepticism and not just blindly accept everything. But if you want to go so far as to say that we're giving insider information to a select group of investors, you got to have more than just a tweet that says, well, in theory, this could be possible, and since it's a black box, I don't know. That's not a good faith call out. That's like sort of looking for social points or some sort of virtue signal. Like, you got to back that up with something, because now you're asking me to prove a negative. It's like, prove you didn't do something. I can't really do that. Yeah. If you make the claim, it's on you to start the dialogue at a point that give me something to refute. Other than, no, that doesn't happen. I mean, I don't really know where this claim came from. It seems to be sourced in sort of emotional jealousy of, is there a private channel for Mystic owners? Yeah, absolutely. That sort of is in line with how a lot of these NFT collections work. Yeah. You buy it, and there's different tiers, and different parts of the community have different access to different conversations based on your level of membership. What goes on in that channel? Mostly people speculating on prices and congratulating each other for buying really expensive assets. That's most of the conversation. Yeah, sure, some of the core developers do communicate in there a little bit, but I don't think I've ever seen information presented there. There's certainly, why would we do that? What would we have to gain by giving insider information to this group of investors that don't need it anyway because they're already large bag holders and highly invested in the Axie space. They've obviously done pretty well reading the system and reading the economy already. Yeah, I don't know, man. So I think that's frustrating from our side of like, you can't just throw out baseless claims like that. And I think that's what pushes it from, this isn't a good faith conversation. You're not some noble community member that's like looking out for the greater good. You're looking for social points and you're like slandering our name in the process. You're not respecting the power that your voice has by using these social media platforms. To us, that's a dissent that is not worth engaging with because it's not good faith, right?
Right. I got you. And actually, exactly that leads into my next question, which is probably also the answer. But, because the final kind of reason these guys gave for, leaving is that, a little mini Twitter war unfolded between, that guy Class A Axie and Psychout. And after that, they got banned from, or they got blocked. They got blocked from Twitter by Geo and Psychout. So Geo and Psychout blocked them, which basically led them to saying that, Sky Mavis is punishing constructive criticism. And that is why we are leaving. If they're punishing constructive criticism, then that means something must be wrong and they can't be trusted. Hence why we leave. Which I think we've already established kind of in this interview itself is not the case, but my question is actually more than around what is the thinking around from Sky Mavis around how will they be interacting with the community and content creators in the future? I think you said yourself, maybe there's a need for a person in PR that specifically looks at this, since this might be a thing that needs attention right now, or what is there any plans?
Yeah, I guess one final note on that. Yeah, it's like a double down in terms of bad faith to go like, you're not listening to my constructive criticism. Again, as a commentator, I saw this for most of my career. I was not a popular commentator for more than half of my casting career. And I saw it on Reddit anytime my face showed up on camera, where people would just post really mean, hurtful insults with zero constructive criticism. And if you push back at all or show any kind of insecurity, you get met with, you got to toughen up, bro. If you want to make it in the entertainment industry, you got to be able to take criticism. And it's like, yeah, but that's not criticism. Or at least not constructive criticism. And throwing that out there and then trying to like use that, it's like gaslighting, right? You've like created this problem, and then when somebody doesn't engage with your problem, you use that as a justification of like, look, this guy won't engage with me, that's why he's a bad actor. And it's like, no, I think you're the bad actor. So how to handle these people is complicated. I have a slightly different approach. I guess I need to be a little careful here. I personally am not big on blocking. I don't think it serves a particularly great purpose. However, the argument for is that, if you just mute them, then they can still post on your threads and like kind of piggyback off of your reach to mail out their FUD. Generally speaking, my approach to that would be like, yeah, but how long is that going to be fun for? People have a short attention span. That, the call out thing is sort of an illusion in terms of buffing up your numbers. People like to soak up the drama short term, but it doesn't really do anything for your content long term. And ultimately being just like the negative guy isn't really super sexy or good for branding long term unless you're like super niche and really, really successful at it. And even then, I think it's a really hard life. So I don't know exactly. I think as we continue to hire and build out the Sky Mavis ecosystem, some communication specialists could certainly make sense. I think there comes a certain point where we get so large and have so many things to be focused on that relatively smaller content creators like this is, it's sort of, you're free to play Axie, not like it, and then sell your Axies. That happens all the time. That's no big deal. That's part of the free market, expected. Game's not for everyone. We totally understand that and have no issues there. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know the exact answer to that question. We're still figuring that out internally, but I think in the short term, we definitely do prioritize. There is some degree of curation that is healthy, and there is some degree of like, we want to shape the community to be a certain way. And I think we do listen to criticism. I think we do have a lot of really good, honest talks with a lot of creators. I think people like this come off really entitled, where, you know, they say, I've been here for 2 months, Jiho won't do an interview with me. Like, dog, there's some people that have been here for 3 years, and they survived crazy losses and hard diamond hands through time, like really rough bear markets that you weren't even into crypto when those bear markets were happening.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes you need to be able to read the room, sort of know your position a little bit. And it's not a personal slight against you. It's just understanding that we have a lot of inbound. There's a lot of creators out there. There's a lot of people that want to talk to us. So like getting access to that is a privilege, and coming across really entitled and then like slandering the people you're trying to interview for not wanting to be on your show is like, you're just, to me, that reeks of like, you're kind of new to this, and that's cool, but like, that's not going to fly around here. We're trying to build something bigger and better and set our own path, you know. So these folks that want us to just follow the path of the centralized games before us, not interested, you know. I saw somebody on Twitter say, like, you know, the Axie community should be about welcoming everyone. He's probably going to watch this video, and I feel a little bad for the call out, but I couldn't disagree with that statement more. We don't want literally everyone. There's a whole class of, you know, we don't want predators in Axie. We don't want hardcore capitalists that are going to come in and abuse people with economics and try to continue to, you know, keep people down through censorship and oppression. We don't want cheaters. We don't want bot farms. We don't want definitive bad actors. We don't want short-term mercenaries that are going to come in and try to manipulate or pump the price and then leave as soon as they make their pump and then dump their holdings. There's a whole group of people that would be a big negative stain on the community if we just opened the floodgates and said, yeah, sure, bad actors, come on in. You like to pump it? You like to dump it? We're for you. I mean, why would we want that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, certainly it's not for everyone, and I think that's a good thing. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, no, I get you. Okay, yeah, no, thanks for that. I mean, it all makes sense to me, and this is the last question about the creators. I have one final question. It's something a bit more lighter, a bit more futuristic speaking, but yeah, my kind of opinion on this whole thing was, in the end, I think, you know, it's a bit tougher now to be an Axie than it was a few months ago, and some people, you know.
Well, yeah, sure, man. That's like the peak bear market. I mean, or a peak bull market. I mean, how's that a comparison to anything?
No, exactly.
Everything is shitty compared to the absolute peak in that short time. So, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
SLP should not have spiked to 35 cents.
Yeah.
If that's your benchmark, then you're in trouble, man. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of the problem is, you know, that people came in at that point, and specifically guys that then, you know, go and investing, and when you're in a situation like them, I think, where you also have scholarships that you've given now and you've put in your money and etc. And now it's falling, and now you're actually scared. And, you know, how do you tell these people you've promised a job to that, hey, you know, I actually want to pull out because I'm scared for my investment? Why not just try and hide it behind maybe a myriad of, you know, reasons, like there's no transparency, or there, you know, et cetera. So that's kind of the feeling I'm getting. I mean, it was really difficult sifting through some of what they said to just really drill down to some, you know, what are some of the things they're saying that might have some value behind it. You know, what can we glean in between all the, how do we say it, the river of excrement. What kind of nuggets are there that we can find? And yeah, I think some of it was there. Okay.
Transparency becomes a weirdly loaded word. Because, like, I mean, I think on the grand spectrum of games, we communicate pretty well. Again, it could be better. It could always be better. But there are a lot of devs that do way less in terms of communication. And when they do communicate, it is only highly edited, curated PR bullshit, right? Like, we are, I think sometimes you need to sit back and appreciate that we still have co-founders that communicate in a very blunt and direct way. You know, it's generally pretty obvious to tell how Alex feels about something. And that's rare. And that might go away as this thing continues to scale, right? As there's more pressure for us to utilize PR strategies and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. When people say like, as an investor, there's just no transparency, so this makes no sense. I mean, it's blockchain, dude. There are very few black boxes. It is a little bit of a black box right now, but I mean, I guess I don't know exactly what that ask is or what that ask means when they say transparency. Like posting leaks of, you know, like pictures of cards, that's not transparency. That's like, you just want better marketing hype and you're hungry for content and you want to see the content. That's fine. And to ask for that is totally fine. And maybe it's justified, but trying to spin that into some narrative about how we're not transparent or somehow shady is, you lost me somewhere in that like logical flow, you know? So I guess I don't know exactly what transparency means in this context.
Yeah, no, I get you. Okay, but I think, thanks a lot. I think we've cleared up a lot of the, you know, kind of questions I had, and I really just wanted to also give you guys a voice where it's actually addressed, because I think it might be nice to have a kind of a mediator here, because always, if just by responding, you're adding fuel to the flame sometimes if you go on their thing and respond. So
yeah,
maybe just take.
And I'm bummed that I got sick on Tuesday, because that was my first day back from my trip, and I was planning on doing Axie Tuesday, and I was planning on talking about some of this stuff, but I was just way too sick with food poisoning to be able to do it. And then I had a full day booked Wednesday, Thursday, yesterday, and now kind of today. So the timing just ended up being a little bit too crazy, and unfortunate that it didn't line up. But yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate being able to come on here. I appreciate being the first guinea pig for the very first Axie Explained interview. So well done. Appreciate you, man.
Awesome. Thanks. No, sorry. I really, really appreciate your time. We've basically run out of time. There was one more question I wanted to ask, but it's quite a complicated topic about balance changes. Do you have the time? Do you have a few minutes to spare?
Yeah, I'll try to give you a short answer.
Let's go. Okay. So yeah, I was just wondering, I've done my own thinking. First of all, how's the esports going for you? This esports season you guys created. I mean, because it ties into my question about certain builds are very popular and meta discussion and all that. But just let's start with, how has the esports season been for you? Is it the success you imagined, and what excites you the most?
Overall, it's been good. This esports season was about conducting experiments and doing as most we could with the limited resources with the private server and that kind of stuff. So given those parameters and hardships, very happy with it. It is definitely like tip of the iceberg. If Axie's alpha, esports is like pre-alpha. So we're definitely getting some good data collection. Definitely learned some things about balance, or maybe I should say reaffirmed some assumptions that I had about balance. There will be a pretty meaty balance patch in between these arena seasons after this one ends and before the next one starts. Still some final I's the dot, T's the cross regarding that, but excited for that balance patch. I don't want to give any details, but at least one change in particular, I think will be the beginning of a huge, huge improvement for Axie Esports. So yeah, within the context of this is mostly about experimenting and seeing what some of our tournament organizers can do. It's been going well so far, mostly pretty good experiments. You know, I was asked by my boss internally, like, what are the viewership expectations for this? And my response was, I don't know. That's why we're doing this preseason. This is the baseline, right? I can make up numbers if you want, but I got really nothing to go on here. This is the first time that we're really pushing this and investing in it. So let's see what happens. So not a clear target there, but we've been getting hundreds of viewers, thousands of viewers. We've had a couple thousand in a couple of these events. We've had some big clips, some exciting moments. So yeah, I think within that framework, it's been going pretty well. We had a couple bumps with the server in the first couple events, but the last few, I think, have been pretty seamless. So that's exciting as well.
Oh man, no, it's been exciting. I participated in one of those first events where there was a bit of server issues. But I mean, all in all, it's so exciting because I used to be competitive in Hearthstone, and just to be in a real like tournament scene again, it really and now it's always that bit extra, because previously it's you build your deck and you come ready with your deck, but if you're really at the top, you kind of just there's a standard few decks that are the same. But now it's it's not just I come with my deck of cards to play. It's I actually own these little monsters. They're like my Pokemon that I'm gonna really play with now, which is such a cool feeling. So on the balance change, the quick question I had, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but the consideration here with balance changes. So I know, coming from Hearthstone yet again, when they did balance changes, they have this crafting material called dust. If you can use dust to craft cards that you don't own, or you can decraft cards you own for more dust, so you can craft these new ones, right? So what they did was, with a balance change, they allowed you to decraft your cards for the full value for dust, in order to help you, because you paid money for the cards, etc. Axie Infinity is obviously a whole different animal with this. So if at all, how will the whole situation be addressed? Let's say I invested, a lot into this kind of Axie that's really strong right now to breed with, and then a week from now, there's a balance change and it isn't what it was. What is the thinking behind that, or what is the considerations? Because I don't think you guys can do much, but maybe you can shed some light on what's the talks been from your side on that.
Yeah, there's big considerations there. It's like a really massive responsibility because there's a financial investment tied to everything. That is absolutely part of the risk of playing Axie. And there are certainly people that purposefully buy underpowered Axies, hoping that, someday they'll get buffed and then all of a sudden they'll be super valuable. That is absolutely an investment strategy that some folks have been successful with. I think Jiho said that basically picture this like a funnel. And in the past, they've had some things that were really broken that kind of had to be reworked. But now we've gotten version 1 of battles into this point where nothing, I think, will need to be completely reworked out of the spirit of what the card does. Now it's mostly just about tuning numbers, right? Maybe this one does a little too much damage. Maybe this one does, needs another parameter, sort of like Sirius, right? It didn't used to be combo with another card. Things like that, like little ways to make it more valuable or less valuable. So I think there's not too much fear in terms of like, wow, Graveland, it does something totally different now. And now this Axie is no synergy. I think that doesn't really need to happen so much anymore. But yeah, there are certainly meta things that can be tweaked and, one little change and all of a sudden all these bred Terminators aren't nearly as good as they were. I don't know if there's a magic answer here. I think we have to be beholden to good game design, and that comes first. Like we think of it as a responsibility and we want to make as few changes as possible, but we're not afraid to make the changes to make the game better, because it is a game first, it's an investment second, and it's the backbone of what we've got going on here is having a good, fun, competitive, balanced game.
Yeah.
So that is the priority. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There is risk there, and there is some trust that comes in with that risk. I think our headspace is more at like the vertical build out of what Axies can do. And skills that might not be as good in version 1 battles, maybe they're pretty good in version 2 of battles. So maybe when lane gameplay comes out, Axies that have Silence Whisper that are really useless right now end up being really good because healing is busted against land chimeras. I don't know. But there are a lot of ways that you can take abilities that feel underwhelming in the current game and buff them up a little bit in the game mode, but then give those Axie parts utility in other aspects of the Axie universe. Right. So it all kind of harkens back to the alpha. 8% of the ecosystem done. Version 1 of battles is not the mecca of Axie gameplay, but it kind of feels like it right now because nothing else exists in the marketplace. But that's why this is such an interesting time, because we're right on the cusp of those really big deployments. Once you have another type of battle, and you have land gameplay, and then you start opening up for like SDK and third-party apps that can be built on top of things, on top of Axies, and allow them to participate in other ways. Yeah, I don't know. It makes me less concerned about the value of, oh no, I've read these Terminators, they've taken a hit now, but they might find value in other ways in the future. So I guess I'd recommend patience in that situation. The snap sale is probably not the greatest strategy if something gets nerfed and you just want to liquidate immediately.
Yeah.
That might be an overreaction, but not financial advice.
No, because when I looked at my take on all of this is the amazing thing about Axie Infinity that is so different from I'll refer to Hearthstone again, but most other trading card games is you can create anything with all the parts that are out there, right? With the limit of 4 parts per Axie. And if you find the right combination, kind of like what happened with Terminator, I think all the cards Terminator has is all the abilities are well designed, but in the combination, it just works so well. And the thing is, you can create anything. So it's not like you're playing, a swamp deck in Magic the Gathering, and you can only use swamp cards, for example. So, it's very, very difficult to create these balance changes, I must be assuming, because you don't know what's going to be broken tomorrow if you drastically start changing cards.
Yes.
There's just no way of knowing. So
exactly. And that's why we want to change as little as possible. And again, sometimes things need to be tweaked, but the goal is over time, less and less tweaks will be needed. And hopefully the meta will continue to evolve, right? That's a certain point of, are we confident in the game design of Axie? And we are, such that we think that the meta is not completely discovered and that there are combinations lurking out there that people haven't really figured out yet. And as we see more of these like Dota pros and Clash Royale pros and Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering and these players from other games that are starting to understand the economic value proposition of Axie a little bit better, some of them are bringing some pretty like big brain theory crafting into the space. And I think it's starting to prove that principles that I was told 3 or 4 months ago, you never put a Nemo in the back line, all this kind of stuff. And I see it in tournaments. It's like, oh, wow. He's like, okay, this is totally different from, the framing. I mean, think about chess, right? Chess doesn't get any patches, but the meta keeps evolving. So I think that's sort of our goal, is to get to that point where we don't have to keep tweaking things from a forceful, buff or nerf perspective, but the meta continues to evolve as, more counters are discovered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Zyori, I think our time is up. I just really, really want to thank you for taking the time to have a chat with me. It's been great meeting you. It's very exciting for me to actually be able to talk to someone of your stature within the community. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you as well, man. Appreciate it. Hope to do it again.
Yeah, cool. Pleasure. And that's the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm Axie Explained. See you next time.